live streaming programs. I'm about to turn it over to Mandy Thompson, who is a wife, mother, and chef extraordinaire. Mandy has been cooking for a number of years, and she has a degree in nutrition and health. Here is Mandy. I'm about to share my screen.
Hello, KDL friends. I'm Mandy Thompson, and today I'm going to be showing you how I make gnocchi. Just a recap, just in case you have not seen my previous video, I am cooking from my home kitchen, so our camera angle is what it is. And my screen where I can see what you can see is actually over here. So every now and then you may see me look over here. So bear with me, I'm learning as I go. So today, like I said, I'm going to be making gnocchi, which is a potato pasta. It's one of those ones that seems like it takes a whole lot of work or that it's really hard to do, but it really isn't. And I really, really like gnocchi because I feel like it's easy to do, and maybe you will once you see this video, but also it's something where all of the ingredients I have in my pantry at all times. It's literally potatoes, flour, some salt, and egg. That's it. We have chickens in our backyard, so I always have eggs, and my pantry is pretty much stocked with the pantry basics. So, like I said, it starts with potatoes. I use russet potatoes, and I like to take the whole potato and boil it with the skin on. What that's going to do is it's going to make it so that the potato retains its flavor and it doesn't get soggy. So I just scrub up 4 to 6 potatoes depending on the size. This was the size of my potatoes on average. There was a couple a little bit bigger than this, but scrub them up real good, put them in a pot of cold water, just enough water to cover the potatoes, bring it to a boil with the lid on, and it'll take maybe 15-20 minutes depending on the size of the potato. You'll just give it a quick test with a knife. If the knife slides in and out real easily, then your potatoes are done. At that point, take the potatoes out. I set them on a not a paper towel, a kitchen towel. Set them on a kitchen towel to cool, just so you can handle them. You don't want them to cool all the way through because we're going to have to mash them up in one way or another. And I find that it's actually easier to mash up when they're a little bit warm. So while I already did do some of these potatoes, I just wanted to show you, this one is cooked. You'll see it split open a little bit, but it didn't completely bust open. This is fine. It did not get waterlogged from this little split, but this also did tell me that it was done. And then when I peel it, instead of using a knife that is going to take away a lot of the potato flesh, once again, I'm home, so you're going to see things like that. That was one of our cats. That was Howl. Anyways, so I like to take either a spoon or a butter knife that does not have a sharp edge and literally just start scraping the skin away. If you can see this, it's just taking away. There's a delay on my screen too, so I apologize for any weirdness. It's just taking the skin away and it's leaving as much of the flesh as possible. That way we have very, very little waste. So yeah, just take and scrape it away. If there's any dark spots or any bruising, go ahead and scrape that out as well. Make sure you can see this. So because I have a long, skinny kitchen, we're making do with my little bit of counter space. And I sort of extended it a little bit today. And I put a cutting board over my sink with a pot of boiling water. So that way I don't have to go back and forth to the stove once it's time to cook the gnocchi. All right, so there we have our full potato. Now at this point, you can mash them up with the potato masher. You could mash them up with a fork. couple of different ways you could do it. I would not blend it. If you blend it, it's actually going to turn gluey and yucky, and we don't want that. We want fluffy potatoes. So what I use is this handy dandy fella here. I already started some of them, so you didn't have to see me do everything. But this is a potato ricer. It looks like a giant garlic press, and it works the same way. You put the potatoes inside here, you smush them down, and it comes out these little holes. And like I said before, if your potatoes are a little bit warm, it actually rices. Did I say right? It's a ricer, potato ricer. It rices a lot easier. I've done them before where I put them in the refrigerator and then taken them out the next day, and I had to use bigger muscles. It didn't work very well. So ideally what you want it to do is just press this. Can you see it come out? The delay is funny for me. I don't think it'll be like that once it actually, the video airs. Okay, so just keep working, keep ricing the potatoes. Like I said, you don't have to have this little gadget. These you can buy in kitchen stores. You can buy them off Amazon. There are some that are not as good as others. I have had ones that were really terrible. So if you do buy one, spend a little bit more. They don't have to be super expensive. I do believe I spent like $25 on this one. Not bad. But if, yeah, you can use a fork. You can use just a regular old school potato masher. Excuse me, this one's harder. Yeah, I really had to concentrate on that one, guys. My husband's in the living room probably laughing at me. Yes, so it doesn't have to be this silky smooth. If you use a fork or an old school just potato masher, you're just going to have some lumps. So what? Not a big deal. This is just going to make it a little bit fancier. Okay. That was my arm workout. There we go. Okay, clean up a little bit. All right, potatoes, riced, not mashed. There they are, beautiful, silky potatoes. Okay, now the fun part. We get to make a mess on the counter. Very important to me is cleanliness. So as you saw a cat run by, we do have cats in the house. They're not allowed on counters and tables. That doesn't mean they don't go on them. So every time before I cook, whether it's just for my family or for somebody else or for guests or whatever, I wash all surfaces. So we're going to be working right on this countertop today, so it is clean. Potatoes, flour, salt, egg. So let's do the flour next. Another reason why I like the gnocchi, if you know me, you know that I don't like baking because it's a little too precise for me. The gnocchi is very forgiving. There is a base recipe, but depending on really how big your potatoes are or the humidity in your home or the humidity in your flour, it's the amount of flour is going to vary. So we'll talk about the consistency that it's supposed to be to get the best gnocchi. But we're going to start with 3 cups of flour. Not really. I'm going to put a full 2 and then maybe 3/4 of that 3rd cup and then just keep it on hand. Let's talk about measuring really quick too, though. This is a dry measure. Okay. This is a wet measure, the one that has the spout. There is a difference. Primarily because dry measurements are basically by weight. So if you don't have a kitchen scale, you really wouldn't know the difference, but there is a difference. In basic cooking recipes, it probably doesn't matter, but in precise baking recipes, it absolutely matters. So if something is a liquid, use a liquid. If something is a dry, use a dry. Alrighty, so I don't know if you noticed, but I fluffed up my flour and then scooped it. That way it's not hard packed down. My little flour container comes with this scraper, or you could use just the back of a knife. Just give it a little tap and a little scoop. And like I said, we're getting messy. We're using the counter. So I'm just going to put this directly onto the counter. There's 1. There's 2. Okay. Here's my 3rd. I'm not going to put the full thing down yet. that much, and then I'm going to put it off to the side. Okay. Spread this out. Now comes your salt, about a teaspoon. Salts matter too. This right here is sea salt. It's a fine ground sea salt. It just gets distributed a little bit better. The sea salt has a more predominantly salty flavor. Okay, dump in your potatoes. Potatoes, nice and Midwest berry. Okay. Make a little well in the middle. When I crack eggs, I like to put them in a bowl just in case maybe it's not the best egg, or maybe a piece of shell came out because nobody wants to eat shell. Yep, that was a bad egg. Good thing I cracked it. Hold on, give me another one. Like I said, we have chickens in our backyard, so sometimes if there's a little tiny peck or crack in an egg that we didn't notice, it can go bad. So let's do that again. Here's our egg. That first egg was really, really easy to crack too. I knew something was wrong. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful yolk. Okay, in the middle it goes. Take a fork and just kind of mix up the egg a little bit. Just give it a little whisk. Okay. And now we're going to get dirty. Start some water to boil. This water was boiling earlier. I turned it down when we started so it didn't all boil off, but it's going to come back up to a boil. So when we're ready, we can start dropping them. Okay. Now comes the fun part. You can still see this. Okay. So we are going to pull from the outside and just mix it in. Pull from the outside. The idea is to not let that egg squirt out everywhere. So we're just slowly pulling from the outside and smooshing in. Now I'm not giving it a really rough work right now. I'm not really mashing it down because I don't want to overwork the dough. We're really just wanting to incorporate it. This is a super fun one to do with kids. I did a kids cooking class a couple of summers ago at Northview, and had the kids make gnocchi. They thought it was so cool. Everybody got their own little pile of stuff. Okay, you see how it's coming together? This is where we're at right now. I wish I had a cameraman that can zoom in, guys. You see that? The light's pretty bright on it. Okay, it's just crumbly right now, not quite together just yet. Right now, it doesn't seem like I need that extra flour, so I'm just going to keep working it. Just pulling it together. Try not to drop it all over your feet. Pull it together. All right. It's coming together a little bit more, so now you do have to use a little bit more muscle. I push from my hips down so I don't overwork my arms too much. This point's a lot like just kneading bread. It's a little more dense. So the reason we don't want to overwork it is because it's going to become very tough. More like a packaged noodle. Gnocchi is, if you've ever had it, you'll know what I mean when I say this. If you've never had it, it's pillowy soft. And that means they're just these beautiful little pillows. You'll see when I cut them up in a moment. And when you bite into them, it's almost like effortless for your tooth to go through it. That's the consistency that you want. All right. Make sure to pick up all the little bits on the board. I noticed they're not on the board. This is my counter. There's a little bit of egg stuck in the bottom there. So if you're gluten-free, allergic to gluten, or just choose not to consume gluten, you can use a flour that's a 1-to-1 ratio, substitution ratio. Bob's Red Mill makes a good one. There's a few others. I am not gluten-free, so I haven't done a whole lot of research, but sometimes I do cook for gluten-free people. And that is one I know that they do like. If you're vegan, I don't know about egg substitutes for this because I've never made it before. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. Okay, so my dough is all together. It's all one beautiful big blob. Right now, it feels like fresh Play-Doh. Like when you first open it before your kids get hair and dirt and kid stuff in it, that's what this feels like. It's a little bit sticky, so I know that I'm going to wind up using a little bit of the reserved flour on the counter when I go to roll it out. But we didn't have to incorporate it in there and make it a tougher dough. It's going to be nice and soft. Okay, this is the part that's super fun. So we're going to break this up into several pieces. I'm only going to take you through a couple of them so we don't get bored. So this is about a third of the dough. I'm going to break that in half again and in half again. You could roll it out in a log at this point, but for me, I like to work with little shorter amounts, smaller amounts. So take your flour, sprinkle on your board. Looks like our water came up to a boil. Perfect timing. So now, I don't know if you can, I'm going to get as close as possible. All right. The delay is weird. Okay. Did you see how easy it was for me to push that in? It's pretty soft, okay? Play-Doh. It's definitely Play-Doh. Okay. At this point, we're going to roll it out into a log. I start with one hand, gentle pressure, not pushing down. Right now, it's just the pressure of my hand. Start with one hand. Fingers are spread apart, okay, like this, and I'm just rolling it. If you push too hard, you're going to flatten it or you're going to break it apart. If your fingers are nice and stiff like this, you're going to flatten it. You just need to be nice and loose. Okay, and then at that point, when it gets a little bit wider than my fingers and I bring in two hands, a little bit more pressure because as we're rolling, it's getting longer and longer and longer. It's making a rope or a snake. And you're using the pressure of your hands as you're pushing like this. You're pulling your fingers apart. It's expanding. It's making the rope longer. I've had gnocchi all different widths, sizes. So this is really up to you. I like it, I'd say, oh, let's see. I'm going to measure it up to one of my fingers once I get it to the point that I like it. I got caught up in too much flour and I smooshed it. Okay, I'd say it's a little bit thinner than the width of my thumb. Okay, I'm super messy. I'm gonna get some of this off a little bit because I forgot to get out a knife. Okay. I take a butter knife and I like them about this big. You see how it turns into a pillow? So I'd say I'm bad at measurements, an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch. There are gnocchi tools, gnocchi boards, where you can take your gnocchi once you've cut it all and you roll it down this really beautiful wooden board that has grooves in it, and it makes little grooves in the gnocchi itself. You can also take the back of a fork and roll it down, and it gives you, oh, that was a bad one. Bad example. Gives you little tiny grooves, and that'll hold a little bit more sauce, but I'm too impatient and I'm not that fancy, so I literally just cut them up. You can take a baking tray, sprinkle it with some flour, and line these all up on the baking tray while you roll out the rest of them. I'm going to set these aside and maybe just do 1 or 2 more rolls, and then we'll drop them in that boiling water, and I will tell you what I like to do from there. Okay. Taking another one. This one's going to be a longer snake, I can tell already. A little more flour on the board. If you have too much flour on your board, your gnocchi is going to slide around. It's going to be very frustrating. So you kind of need to just find this happy balance of a little bit sticky with a little bit of help from the flour. I hope you can see what I'm doing. I hope it makes sense to you. All right, it's getting bigger, so I'm going to go in with 2 hands. And remember, I start my hands really loose, and then as I'm rolling, I take them apart a little bit, and I keep doing that. Again, if you press too hard, you're going to smush it flat, or you're going to rip it, which isn't a big deal. It's very forgiving. This is going to be way too long, so I'm going to get rid of some of it. Okay. You want to try to roll them out and cut them the same size so that they cook all evenly. If you have some that are bigger, they're going to take a little bit longer to cook. And these are really neat. You know that they're done when they float to the top. There's really no timing involved. See, a recipe that isn't too strict and no timer that needed. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and drop this first batch. It will probably take about 2, 3, maybe 4 minutes for them to fall to the bottom, cook, and then float to the top and let us know that they're ready. So all pasta water needs to be salted heavily. It just makes all the difference in tasty, tasty pasta. So then I take my little gnocchi. They're gentle, but they're not going to completely fall apart or smoosh if you handle them. So be careful, but not too careful. And then just drop them in your water. If you did put these on a baking sheet with flour, so you scooped them up off of the baking sheet, kind of give them a little shake in your fingers to get rid of the excess flour, just so that your water doesn't get all goopy and gluey. And while those are boiling and I roll out one more, I'll talk to you about sauces. Give them a little zhuzh in the water, just to make sure they're not stuck to one another, and let them do their thing. Okay. So sauces. These are great in all sorts of sauces. You can do a tomato-based sauce, just a marinara. Really good in a bolognese. I don't know which way is the correct way to say it. Pesto is really awesome. If you saw my last video, I did make a kale and walnut pesto, and that would be fantastic. I would definitely thin that out a bit with a little bit more oil. What I do, they're moving around. What I do as they cook, I have, if you can see over on my stove, I have a big pot right there. Tonight I'm serving these with a brown butter sage sauce. Literally all it is in that pot was a stick of butter. So it's 8 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And you let it go on like low, medium low. If you have numbers on your dial, I think I cooked it at like a 2 or a 3. Your butter will melt. It'll get a little bit foamy. That's when the milk solids are pulling away from the fats. And then that's what starts to brown. So brown butter is almost burnt. Not quite. It's just like the caramelized fats. At that point, I turn the heat off, put in a little bit of sage, and just let it sit. So as the gnocchi starts to come to, whatever sauce I have waiting on the stove, and I just slowly add it to that sauce. It's coating it in the sauce, and it's keeping it warm while everything else cooks, because that 8 tablespoons of butter is a lot of butter, but it's going to be for this entire batch of gnocchi. I'm going to go ahead and get those transferred over, and then I will tell you about keeping the gnocchi different ways. Just adding it to the pan. When they came up, they did, sorry, this delay on my screen makes it funny for me. So they did poof up a tiny bit, not a whole lot. They didn't expand a whole lot, just a little bit of poof because they had that egg in there. But yeah, that's what the gnocchi looks like when it comes out. So gnocchi is also a really good one for saving for later, for freezing. So if you did want to freeze some, you would get to the point where we pulled it out of the sauce and then just lay it out on a baking sheet. I personally like to drizzle a little bit of olive oil on there just so they don't clump up together. You can either freeze it on that sheet, and then once they're frozen, transfer them over to a bag or whatever you like to freeze items in, or just toss them in your it doesn't really matter. You don't have to freeze it separately. Strike that, rewind. All right, get some more going here. And then decide how I'm going to say goodbye in this video. So we have also made sweet potato gnocchi, which is awesome. I will say the sweet potatoes are a lot softer than the russet potatoes, so you will wind up needing a little more flour. And really, the pesto sauce is still really awesome with that. This brown butter sage would be fantastic. A little bit of olive oil and Parmesan cheese would be awesome with that. We've made gnocchi before with, you can add ricotta cheese or Parmesan cheese right to the dough. But again, that's going to change the moisture content. So you will wind up needing a little more flour. Just be cautious of how much you're adding so that it doesn't get too tough on you. We've even made chocolate gnocchi before. My son Brody had a really awesome idea one time. I think he was like 8 years old. And he asked me one day, why isn't there chocolate gnocchi? And I was like, I don't know. That's a great question. Let's make it. So we did the potato dough. We still made it out of potato, but we added some ricotta cheese, and we added some cocoa powder, which acted as some of the flour. So take that in consideration if you're going to give the chocolate one a try. Cooked it the same exact way. We did not toss it in any sort of oil or butter afterwards. We just put it into bowls, and then we made a raspberry sauce and then shaved fresh chocolate, or not fresh chocolate, shaved chocolate over the top, and then put fresh whipped cream. And it was so awesome. And I said we a couple of times in this video because my kids have made this with me several times. Not just the kids in that cooking class, but my children as well. When my daughter kept asking for it over and over, I said, well, if you want it that badly, you need to learn how to make it, right? I don't think she's made it on her own yet, but she could. All right, getting one more batch going. These ones are a little bit bigger. Whoopsie. Whoopsie. Okay, I think that's it for now. I made potato gnocchi. I will make sure to include the ingredients and the measurements when I send over this video to our friends at KDL so that you can get it all and make it all yourself. Teach your kids how to make it. Teach your partner how to make it. It was really fast and quick with very humble, inexpensive ingredients. And you just make it fancy with however you want to fancy it up, whether it's the sauce, or if you add that little ridge to it to hang on to the sauce, makes it a little bit fancier. You can make them bigger, you can make them smaller. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I have 2 more videos to do after this. So if you're enjoying my awkwardness, then pay attention, because Katie L will post some more in a couple of weeks. Thank you for watching.
Hi, it's Kathy again, and I want to thank Mandy. I think that was a terrific show, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. And that's it for Cooking with Mandy tonight. Have a great night, and we look forward to seeing you in all of our KDL branches.